Coming to sixth question, the question is on Rixian concept of development, where he defined development in terms of change, right? And Riggs talked about different forces, particularly he talked about exogenetic change as well as endogenetic change, right? So if you are good in Prasad and Prasad, we can easily answer this question, so it is not difficult to answer this question. Alright, so first of all, we'll try to understand different elements of the question. Alright, the question states that more exogenetic. So if there is more exogenetic, if the more exogenetic the process of diffraction, so exogenetic in the process of diffraction, right? So first there is an element of process of diffraction, right? So the more exogenetic leads to more formalism and more what we call heterogeneous in its prismatic phase, right? The more endogenetic, less is formalism and less is heterogenetic character. Alright, so examine the hypothesis of Riggs. Alright, so we need to explain Rixian concept of exogenetic change, exogenetic process of diffraction, endogenetic process of diffraction, and the impact of exogenetic process of diffraction on formalism, heterogeneous. Similarly, the impact of endogenetic process of diffraction on what you call formalism as well as heterogeneity. Alright, so this is, if we can divide these elements, then it is very easy to answer the elements of Riggs. Alright, so first of all, what is diffraction? How this diffraction is defined by Riggs? So first of all, start our answer with the definition on diffraction, the process of diffraction, right? So diffraction as well as integration. So how Riggs has what we call defined development, right? So development is always defined as both the process of diffraction and integration of structures as well as functions, right? So it is, development is regarded as the process of increasing autonomy of structures. So there is a structural differentiation, functional differentiation, as well as structural integration as well as functional integration, and in this process the autonomy of different structures is increased. So Rixian concept of development, Rixian concept of diffraction, right? And what is diffraction and how this diffraction, how this change is seen in heterogeneous societies, or how this change is seen in prismatic societies, right? So what is a prismatic phase? So what is the prismatic phase? Define this prismatic phase along with the process of diffraction, right? So how this diffraction in a prismatic phase or in prismatic societies, how this diffraction is brought out? The next paragraph, right? So in first paragraph, para 1, try to define what is prismatic society or prismatic phase, what is the level of diffraction and integration, in what you call prismatic societies. Alright, now the factors, the factors that bring diffraction, the factors behind diffraction, that is both the exogenetic factors as well as endogenetic factors. First talk about exogenetic factors. Alright, so what is exogenetic factors, how these exogenetic factors bring a kind of change, and what is the impact of change? Alright, so what is the impact of change on formalism as well as heterogeneity? The question itself gives the answer. The question says that there is more formalism as well as more heterogeneous. Whether Riggs is right or wrong, whether Riggs is right in saying that the exogenetic process will really increase formalism and heterogeneous, right? So we need to what we call answer this point. So first in the first paragraph, say that right, according to Riggs, right, exogenetic change, that is a change that is brought by external factors, will definitely increase formalism. Right. So what is formalism? Define formalism. Right. Define formalism according to Riggs. Right. And what is heterogeneous character? Right. So that is what we need to do. Right. Now in the first paragraph, that is A, we should support Riggs. That is, we should say that exogenetic change will definitely increase formalism as well as heterogeneous. At the same time, you should also bring out the other side of the coin. That is, we should also bring out the criticism of Riggs. You can use G.H. Wilson, you can use Michael Crozier, right? So what do you call, it is up to us. So support Riggs as well as criticize Riggs. That means it need not necessarily, exogenetic change need not necessarily bring more amount of formalism as well as more amount of heterogeneous. So remember, Riggs has used only one side of this. Riggs has seen only one side of the coin. He has not focused on the other side of the coin. But in our answer, we should provide both these pictures. We should provide both what you call what Riggs said, that is in support of Riggs as well as in criticism of the Riggs. Similarly, then talk about the endogenetic factors. The endogenetic change. What is endogenetic change? Right? The factors behind this endogenetic change, the process of bringing endogenetic change, the impact of endogenetic change on formalism as well as heterogeneity. Same, pros as well as cons. Support in favor of Riggs and oppose, that is criticize against the Rigksian concept. So as we are writing an answer, we need to bring complete picture of this issue. So we need to examine this hypothesis. So what is the truth in this what you call Rigksian concept? Our answer should focus on this truth of Rigksian concept. So there is both truth as well as there are certain what you call neglected aspects of Riggs. So we need to highlight both these things. Right? That should be our answer. Right? So if you can divide, the easiness of the answer lies when you can divide this question into different parameters, then we can write the answers very easily. So defining prismatic society, defining what you call diffraction, the process of diffraction in prismatic societies. Then we talk about the concept of exogenetic change, the impact of exogenetic change, what Riggs has said, what Riggs has failed. Right? Then what is endogenetic change, what Riggs has said and what Riggs has failed. Then coming to our universal conclusion. Right? So universal conclusion is that exogenetic change or endogenetic change may not be the same as given by Riggs. It can be two ways. Right? So that should be our conclusion. Right? So coming to the next question. The next question is on the environment and situational conditions in which the government operates have an important bearing on its human resource development practice. So it is a topic of personal administration, the environmental factors, the situation in which the government is placed. Right? So now though it is a question on personal administration, alright, then as the question revolves around the environment and situational conditions, right, the environment and situational conditions, that is ecological approach on public administration, ecological approach on personal administration. So the environment and the ecology in which the government is placed always impacts the government, not only the government but even the what you call the human resource practice of the government. So if if we can highlight this point, this would be the much better point. That is, if you can start your answer by highlighting the ecological approach to public administration. Ecological approach or systems approach to public administration. So we can use this. We can use Robert Dahl, we can use John Gause, we can use what we call Riggs. Right? So Riggs is the one who has used this approach. It is a Riggs who has what we call popularized this ecological approach in public administration. So there is nothing wrong in using Riggs here. Right? So even he wrote a book on this ecology of public administration. Alright, so the ecology, the environment within which the government is placed has an important role in placing what you call this human resources, that is human resource development, human resource practices. It depends upon in which the government is placed, right? So now again, the kind of situations present before 1991 and after 1991, again we can also bring out, this is one phase. So before 1991 and after 1991, the human resource practices, human resource development, alright, before 1991 and after 1991. Apart from 1991, that is after the emergence of LPG, this is one thing. Now along with LPG, if we can note the importance of new public governance. So after 2008, we see emergence of a new thing called as new public governance. So we had new public service approach. Along with new public service, we also have another thing, another sub-paradigm, another paradigm that got emerged in public administration is new public governance. Alright, so NPG, right? So NPS, NPG. So after 1991 and after 2008, particularly after subprime crisis, right? So how this environment has affected human resource development practices of a nation, right? So though it is what we call a question on personal administration, we can also bring in the impact of developing countries perspective like India. Alright, so if we can what we call highlight these points, the answer is totally different. It will be the perfect answer. Right? So we need to highlight the situations, the environment and situational conditions. So here environment and situational conditions means the governments, the conditions in which the governments are placed, the governments placed under socialistic conditions, the governments placed under what we call economic or capitalistic conditions, governments placed after this subprime crisis. So these are different types of conditions. Situational conditions are environmental conditions in which the governments are placed, and how these conditions have what we call affected human resource development. That is not only the recruitment, the kind of training that should be given to the public servants or civil servants. Alright, so let us go to the answer now. So first of all, alright, let us start our answer from this point of what is the environment and the situation. So for this, use ecological approach. Write this, write the meaning of ecological approach and systems approach. Second one, alright, the governments placed under socialistic conditions, that is before 1991. So what is the kind of recruitment practices, right, and what is the focus of training? So human resource development always depends upon the kind of training that is given to the human resources, the kind of training that is imparted to the human resources, the focal elements of training before 1991. After 1991, right, we see a role change, right, we see a change in the nature of state, impact of neoliberal society on bureaucracy, impact of neoliberalism on public administration. If anyone has read IGNO, then you can write a very good answer on this point, right? The impact of what you call 1991 reforms or neoliberalism or capitalism on bureaucracy or public administration. So after 1991, so what is the kind of recruitment and what is the kind of training? Right? And after 2008, same recruitment, training. So if we can highlight these three phases, definitely our answer will be unique and good. Alright, so this should be the part of the answer. Alright, so I always request the students who are going for UPSC exam to read IGNO books thoroughly. Alright, they are the one which will help you a lot. Right, so this should be the answer. Alright, so that means our conclusion, human resource development should always be in tune with the changing conditions. Right, the entire human resource practices should be, it should be what you call it should go along with the changing times. So use the statement of Glenn Stahl. Right, he is the one who has given the importance of public services. Herbert Feener. Alright, so you can find these definitions again in Lakshmikant, or you can find them in what you call any of the public administration books, but alright, in IGNO books as well as in Lakshmikant. Alright, so reading textbooks is very important. So this should be the answer for this question. Coming to the next question. So question is on what you call Lindblom's policy making. Lindblom's decision making model. Right? So Charles Lindblom, who is known for incremental decision making, right? An incremental decision making that is popularly used in governmental decision making. So governmental decision making, alright, it is more similar, or it goes along with the lines of what you call Lindblom's model. Alright, so the question is about Charles Lindblom. Right, Lindblom and his incremental model. Incremental model of decision making. Alright, so let me read the question once. Lindblom regarded decision making as an unattainable goal. In the light of the statement suggests measures to avoid policy failures. Alright, so decision making is an unattainable goal, suggests measures to avoid policy failures. Alright, so there are two things which are attached. So decision making and policies. In what way policies and decisions are interrelated? So if we can bring out this link, half of the answer is over. Then what kind of theory was given by Lindblom and how it is different from, or how it is what we call different from other possible decision making theories like Herbert Simon's. Alright, so if you can analyze this, then the second part of the answer is over. Alright, so first of all, see, I'll try to give a brief description of Charles Lindblom theory. Alright, so incremental model of decision making, also called as partisan model, also called as step-by-step model of decision making. Alright, so that means new decisions are made. New decisions are made, right, based upon the existing decisions, right? So based upon the existing decisions, new decisions are being taken, or new decisions are attached to the existing decisions, right? So there will be a basis for a decision, and based upon this basic decisions, all other decisions are being made. So and each decision is attached to the other decisions. That is what incrementalism in decision making. We take one decision, based upon the decision, based upon the working of the decision, we'll take another decision again, and so on, so on. So it goes on. So that is what Charles Lindblom's incremental model of decision making is. Alright. So which is mostly seen in government. It is mostly seen in governmental decision making. Alright. So Lindblom regarded decision making as an unattainable goal. Now what do you mean by unattainable goal? What is this unattainableness means? It is simply rationality. Rationality in decision making. As Simon pointed out, rationality in decision making is always difficult, or it is unattainable. Alright. So now, as it is unattainable, what kind of decisions should be made and how decisions should be made? Alright. So here we can use the help of Simon and his reasons for not achieving rationality are simply hurdles faced in achieving the rationality. So organizational factors, situational factors, informational factors, individual factors, administrative factors, alright, the structural factors. So there can be different types of factors that will limit the rationality. That is the reason why decision making is an unattainable. Right? So we always keep that is the administrative man. Right? The administrative man always make a series of decisions, which is nothing but a policy. So policy is always defined as a series of decisions made. Right? A decisions where policy is nothing but a decision made which is changed continuously. That is, there is a change in the decisions already made, and new decisions are added to the existing decisions, and this series of decisions we call it as policy according to Charles Lindblom. Alright. So highlight the different challenges or hurdles faced in achieving the rationality, and it is because of these hurdles. It is because of these hurdles, right? Decision making is an unattainable. Alright. So to overcome this, Charles Lindblom has provided an incremental model of decision making, where one decision is added to the other decision, and this simply goes on. Alright. Now, how to avoid these hurdles, the kind of hurdles. So when you can identify the hurdles, then facing these challenges, removing these hurdles is not a difficult task. Alright. So removal of hurdles. So when you know organizational factors, personal factors, or the situational factors, the structural factors, then we can simply avoid these failures and improve the policy making. Right. The best example of this, Charles Lindblom's theory, is the policy on poverty alleviation. Right. So how this poverty, the public policy on poverty alleviation has been designed from 1970s till date. Right. So what kind of decisions were taken? So initially poverty alleviation was targeted by using food distribution. Then we talk about providing of employment. Then we talked about distribution of income. Then we talked about providing of housing facilities. So if you take this series of decisions, first it was food, then employment, then infrastructure, that is basic amenities, then income distribution. That means one decision is added to the other decision. Right? That means a typical government decision making or a typical policy making in the government. A new decisions or new policies are added to the existing decision. So this is the best example of incremental model. So rationality in this kind of policy making can be done only when the hurdles are identified and they are removed, right? So the crux of the answer revolves around this element of identifying hurdles and removing the hurdles, right? So even in Prasadam Prasad you can find these hurdles. We have a chart. We have chart in what you call the topic of Prasadam Prasad in the topic of Herbert Simon in Prasadam Prasad, as well as in Lakshmikant Public Administration book, right? So when you go to the chart you can find different types of hurdles, right? So our answer revolves around this element.